There are 6 genes that determine whether fasting gives you mental clarity or brain fog, cravings, and a binge cycle. They control how much dopamine you make, how fast your brain burns through it, and how quickly it gets cleared. If fasting has ever wrecked you, this is probably one reason why. I'm Dr. Ben Lynch, and that crash you keep hitting, the fog, the cravings, the guilt when you break, that's not a willpower problem. That's a biology problem. And it's the thing standing between you and every benefit you started fasting for in the first place. The fat loss, the clarity, the longevity, all of it. Once you understand these 6 genes, you'll know exactly why fasting works for some people and not others, and what you can do about it so it finally works for you. Chapter 1. While fasting protocols fail, the hidden assumption. You can't scroll through a health feed without hitting a fasting protocol. Huberman talks about time-restricted feeding. Sinclair links it to cellular repair and aging. Rhonda Patrick breaks down the metabolic science, and the benefits are legit. Intermittent fasting triggers your body to switch from burning glucose to burning ketones. It activates pathways for cellular repair. The research is solid. There's a problem. Every single one of these protocols carries the same hidden assumption that the experience is roughly the same for everyone. That if you're struggling, you just need to push harder, try longer, be more disciplined. That assumption is wrong, and it's the reason why many people are white-knuckling it through fasts that are actively working against their biology. The missing variable? Your neurochemistry, specifically dopamine. Now, before you think dopamine, I've heard this before, this is not the dopamine detox conversation that you've been hearing. This goes much deeper, because what determines how your brain handles dopamine during a fast comes down to your DNA, and that changes everything about how you should approach your personal fasting. But to see why, you need to understand what's actually happening inside your brain the moment you stop eating, and it starts with one amino acid most people have never heard of. Chapter 2. Dopamine and fasting. What happens to your brain when you stop eating? Dopamine is built from protein, specifically from an amino acid called tyrosine, which you get from foods like eggs, meat, fish, dairy. When you're fasting, you're not eating. No food means no incoming tyrosine, so dopamine production starts to dwindle, and your brain has to run on whatever's already circulating and stored. Think of it like a fuel truck. When you're eating normally, the tank gets topped off throughout the day. When you fast, the income stops, but the spending never does. Your brain is still firing dopamine, still clearing it, still breaking it down. You're spending from a tank that isn't getting refilled. Now here's why it doesn't hit you right away. Your neurons actually store dopamine in tiny containers called vesicles. Think of them as a savings account. For most people, days 1 and 2 of a fast, you're running on savings. That's why the first day or 2, you usually feel fine, maybe even good. But by day 2, sometimes sooner, the savings run out. Production can't keep pace with spending, and that's when the crash hits. Brain fog. Not tired, you literally cannot organize a thought. Motivation collapses. You can see what you need to do, you just cannot make yourself start. Flat mood, like the color drained out of everything. And then the cravings. Not a craving like, oh, a cookie would be nice. A craving like your brain is screaming at you to eat. Right now, preferably carbs, preferably sugar, because that's the fastest way to spike dopamine right back up again. Sound familiar? If it does, the question isn't, why am I so weak? The question should be, why does my brain burn through dopamine faster than other people's? And that answer lies in 6 specific genes, each one controlling a different part of your dopamine system, and genetic variants in any of them change how long you can fast before that wheel comes off. Chapter 3. The 6 dopamine genes: TH, MTHFR, DRD2, DAT1, COMT, and MAO-A. Your dopamine system isn't controlled by one gene, it's a network, and I think the easiest way to explain it is plumbing. Different genes control the water pressure, the pipe diameter, the drain speed, and whether the faucet leaks. A problem with any of those changes the whole system. Here are 6 that matter the most. First, TH. This is the factory. It's the gene that builds dopamine from tyrosine. Some people have a variant that runs the factory at lower capacity. During a fast, when there's no incoming raw material, a smaller factory hits its limit faster. Second, MTHFR. This is a supply truck. It delivers a key ingredient called BH4. This is needed for the factory to run. The C677T is extremely common, About 10% of Europeans and 14% of East Asians carry 2 copies. When you have this variant, your factory is chronically undersupplied. Fasting makes a bad supply situation worse. Third, DRD2. These are the catcher's mitts. This gene determines how many dopamine receptors sit in your brain's reward centers. One variant gives you roughly a third fewer receptors, meaning you need more dopamine to feel the same motivation as satisfaction. About 22% of Europeans carry it. In some East Asian populations, it's as high as 62%. Fourth, DAT1. This is the vacuum. It controls how fast dopamine gets sucked back out of the gap between your neurons after it fires. The most common version worldwide pulls dopamine out faster. 70% of Europeans carry it, 86% of East Asians. During a fast vacuum on top of a slowing production is like filling a bathtub with the drain wide open. When DAT pulls dopamine back into the neuron, it's supposed to go back into vesicle storage, refilled and ready to fire again. But COMT and MAO-A are sitting inside that same neuron, and they break down a portion of it before it can be recycled. So DAT isn't just pulling the signal off the synapse faster, it's feeding dopamine directly to the enzymes that destroy it. Fast vacuum, open shredder. The vesicle pool empties faster than any single gene explains. Fifth, COMT. This is the mop. In your prefrontal cortex, where focus, planning, and impulse control happen, COMT handles dopamine cleanup. The fast version mops up dopamine about 4 times faster than the slow version. Those are exactly the brain functions that collapse during a fasting crash. And sixth, MAO-A. This is the shredder. It breaks dopamine down permanently, gone for good. High-activity MAO-A versions run the shredder at full speed. Whatever dopamine you produce during a fast gets burned through faster, deepening the deficit. I carry both of these, a fast COMT and high-activity MAO-A, and I'll tell you exactly what that means in practice. When I break a fast, I have to actively talk myself out of binging, not because I'm hungry, because my dopamine system has been running on fumes and it's screaming at me to eat everything in sight. I have to literally say to myself, don't, wait, slow down. That's not a willpower failure. That's what a depleted dopamine system with 2 fast clearance genes feels like when food finally becomes available. I know what's happening in my brain at the moment, and I still have to fight it. Now, any one of these variants, it's manageable. Your body can compensate, but most people don't just carry one. And when these variants start stacking, that's when things go from I'm a little foggy to I can't function. Chapter 4, Gene Stacking and Reward Deficiency, while multiple variants multiply. When you carry variants in 2, 3, 4, 5 of these genes at the same time, the effects don't just add up, they multiply. Think of it like a paycheck. One gene variant is like a small tax. You barely notice. But if you're getting taxed on production, then taxed again on how many receptors can use it, taxed again on how fast it gets recycled, and taxed again on how fast it gets burned through, by the time you're done, there's almost nothing left in your account. Now try fasting on top of that. Someone with 1 or 2 variants in this pathway might fast for several days before noticing real cognitive drag. Someone with variants stacked across 4 or 5 of these genes might crash hard within the first 24 hours, sometimes even sooner. Same fast, same discipline, completely different biology. I know because I carry variants in 5 of these 6 genes. Nobody in the fasting world talks about this part. This runs in families. These gene variants travel together across generations. If your parents struggle with fasting, with mood crashes or carb cravings, and you do too, it's probably not a coincidence. You likely inherited the same genetic combination. Researchers actually have a name for this pattern. It's called reward deficiency syndrome. And fasting didn't create that deficit, it just exposed it. Everything so far applies across the board, but roughly half of you are dealing with one more layer on top of all of this. It's biological, it's predictable, and it gets ignored almost every time fasting comes up. Chapter 5, Fasting in the Menstrual Cycle, the estrogen-dopamine connection. Estrogen directly supports your dopamine system. Brain imaging research shows that women in the first half of their cycle, when estrogen is rising, have significantly more activity in the brain's reward centers compared to the second half, which means your menstrual cycle is either helping your fast or it's actively sabotaging it. It depends on timing. Your best fasting window is days 5 through 13, the follicular phase, right before ovulation. This is when estrogen is peaking, your dopamine floor is higher, you have more runway. Your worst fasting window is the week before your period. Estrogen drops, progesterone peaks, and then it crashes. Dopamine availability goes with it. If you already carry dopamine vulnerable variants, fasting during this phase hits you from two directions at once. And for the roughly 3 to 8% of women who experience PMDD, this isn't just a hormonal problem. Research directly links it to disrupted dopamine signaling during this phase. Fasting on top of that is working directly against you. So whether it's your genes, your cycle, or both, the question isn't whether fasting is good or bad. The question is, what do you do when your biology is working against the protocol? Chapter 6. How to support dopamine during fasting. Supplements, timing, and alternatives. You don't actually need a genetic test to know if this applies to you. If you're hitting brain fog, motivation collapse, or cravings by day 1 of a fast, your body is already giving you the answer. The symptoms are the signal. Start there. And you've got options. Option 1. Support dopamine during the fast. Your dopamine factory needs specific cofactors to run. If any of these are missing, the factory slows down, whether you're eating or not. I formulated dopamine nutrients specifically for this. It provides direct precursors and the specific cofactors needed to make dopamine. And don't overlook hydration. Fasting depletes electrolytes, and magnesium gets excreted at a much higher rate the deeper into a fast you go. That matters because magnesium depletion causes irritability, fatigue, and brain fog on its own, symptoms that stack directly on top of already low dopamine. Optimal electrolyte replaces what fasting takes, and it adds creatine because your body stops making it when you're not eating, and your brain depends on creatine when glucose is restricted. Option 2, modify the fast. Shorter windows, 12-12 instead of 16-8. Protein-sparing fasts that keep tyrosine available so your factory still has raw material. Avoid fasting on days when you need peak cognitive performance. And for women, align your fasting schedule with your cycle. Longer fasts in your follicular phase, shorter or none at all in the luteal phase. Option 3. Skip extended fasting entirely. Many of fasting's benefits can be achieved in other ways. Exercise activates autophagy through independent pathways. Sleep optimization supports cellular repair. Caloric moderation without rigid time restriction reduces metabolic stress without the dopamine crash. And option 4, know your genetics. If you have 23andMe or Ancestry DNA data, Strategy can map your specific genetic variants across COMT, MAO-A, MTHFR, and DRD2. These are the genes with the biggest impact on your dopamine system during a fast. The goal isn't to label yourself. It's to see your full dopamine landscape so you stop guessing and start making decisions based on how you're actually wired. Fasting is not bad. What's bad is a one protocol fits everyone approach that ignores how differently our brains are wired. If you've been beating yourself up for failing at fasting, now you may know why. It was never a willpower problem. And with the right support in place, fasting can actually work for you the way it was supposed to. And dopamine is only one system these genes affect. That MTHFR variant, the one undersupplying your dopamine factory, also hits your mood, your energy, your methylation, and your cardiovascular health. It's one of the most common genetic variants in the world, and most people have no idea they carry it. I made a whole video on MTHFR, what it does, who carries it, how to support it. That is the one to watch next.